Let us begin this morning with the shutdown of the federal government. Lawmakers failed to resolve a budget dispute last night, forcing the money to run out at midnight. Both sides, of course, are now blaming each other for not extending funding past the deadline. Listen.
Chuck Schumer's decided to close the government down. Now, it goes against everything he's ever said throughout his entire career. He's desperate. He's making a personal, selfish decision to close the government to give himself some sort of political cover.
We see now Republicans are plunging America into a shutdown, rejecting bipartisan talks, pushing a partisan bill, and risking America's health care, worst of all.
Well, the last-ditch efforts to pass a spending bill failed in the Senate just hours before midnight. While there was some crossover, the legislation did not come close to the 60-vote threshold. This is the first shutdown since 2019, which happened during President Trump's first term. We've got a team of correspondents and coverage of the shutdown. Aaron Navarro is at the White House. But let's begin this morning with CBS News Congressional correspondent Nikole Killion, who's on Capitol Hill. So, Nikole, a few Democrats did break ranks last night to join the Republicans. What was their thinking, and what's the likelihood that the Republicans will garner more support to get this bill passed?
Yeah, that's right. Well, those three members include Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, Senator Cortez Masto of Nevada, and Senator Angus King, who is an independent from Maine, but caucuses with the Democrats. You know, Fetterman had previously supported that House-backed bill to fund the government back in September. You know, his argument was, I'm always going to vote to fund the government. But in the case of Cortez Masto and Angus King, you know, their concern was that the consequences could potentially be worse if we get to the point of a shutdown, which we are now in, just the impact on the federal government, the impact on their constituents. And so they thought that it was better to support additional government funding at this time. The big question is whether or not other Democrats may follow suit. I did speak with leader John Thune yesterday and asked him whether he's having any conversations with Democrats to try to woo them over. Take a listen to his response.
There are some conversations. There are Democrats who are very unhappy with the situation that they're in. And what we're saying is that we need, as I think was pointed out here, another 5. We need 8 total.
I'm concerned about Americans' health care. That's what we Democrats are concerned about. They're having real trouble. It's going to get a lot worse with this 114% increase. And we feel we're representing our constituents in the best way possible. We're insisting.
And so that was Leader Schumer's response when I asked him if he was concerned about some of those conversations potentially between Republicans and Democrats. But look, as you heard him there say, though, he continues to insist on some form of bipartisan negotiations to try to get out of this situation. He also remains insistent that Senate Democrats remain in lockstep with House Democrats as this process plays out.
All right, so as the process plays out, Nikole, where does the debate go from here? In other words, what happens next for people who are waiting on paychecks, who are not going to be getting them, who have bills to pay? Just break down the process where we might come to some kind of a resolution.
Well, I think it's the old adage, you know, if at first you don't succeed, try again. I mean, that's basically what we're going to see Congress do over the next, who knows, days, weeks, months even. You know, right now, the plan, at least today, is that we'll see the Senate try to hold another round of votes, although they may just be procedural votes, not actual votes on government funding. Also, keep in mind that we expect the Senate to observe the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur, which means they may not take any action on the floor into tonight and tomorrow. So there will be a little bit of a lag there. That's also why the House is not currently in to observe that Jewish holiday. So, you know, they are running up against the calendar here, although you could argue that was the case earlier this week as well. So again, you know, the Senate will continue to try to bring up these continuing resolutions, but short of that, unclear, like I said, how long this will continue.
All right, Nikole Killion for us on Capitol Hill. Nikole, thank you. Folks, we're going to keep monitoring live pictures that are coming into us all across the Capitol. So when we see one of the leaders, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, stepping in front of a microphone, we may take that, share with you what they're up to. But for now, let's bring in Aaron Navarro, who's joining us at the White House. Aaron, How is President Trump and the White House reacting? We saw the images that came into us from the meeting that he had with Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, and the Senate minority leader, Chuck Schumer, of course, trolling those two gentlemen by having hats that say Trump 2028 prominently displayed on the Resolute desk. But what is he saying this morning?
Vlad, what's interesting is we have not heard from President Trump since the shutdown officially began. We have heard from Vice President Vance on CBS Mornings put the blame on Senate Democrats for the shutdown, while also saying that he himself would visit the Capitol to talk to them about health care subsidies should negotiations lead that way. The White House, on the official government website, has a shutdown clock, essentially, with the time running since it began, blaming it solely on Democrats. The website is titled, "Democrats Have Shut Down the Government." Inside the White House press briefing room is a looping video of congressional Democrats in past times that they have supported not shutting down the government when they had control of Congress. What's new this time is this potential for mass layoffs among the federal workforce. Take a listen to President Trump talk about that when speaking with reporters yesterday.
We'd be laying off a lot of people that are going to be very affected, and they're Democrats. They're going to be Democrats. As you know, this country, no country can afford to pay for illegal immigration, health care for everybody that comes into the country, and that's what they're insisting. A lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things.
Now, this direction of layoffs came from the White House's budget office, which told federal agencies just days ago to look at not only eliminating personnel through reduction in forces or layoffs during a potential shutdown, which is now official, but also encouraging them to eliminate programs, quote, not consistent with the president's agenda. We have reached out to several agencies to see the numbers on who could be potentially laid off, and we have not heard back yet.
All right, Aaron Navarro reporting from the White House this morning. Aaron, thank you very much. So the shutdown is likely to impact the U.S. economy in ways beyond the federal government and those government employees facing furloughs or job losses. It will also likely delay the release of some critical economic data. CBS News MoneyWatch correspondent Kelly O'Grady is here with me in Studio 55 to talk more about that. So let's talk about the potential ripple effect on the economy based on what's happening in Washington.
So the estimate from EY Parthenon that they gave to CBS News is you would lose $7 billion per week, every week that the government is shut down to the U.S. economy. Now, I know that sounds like a really big number, but if you put it into context, it is 0.1% of U.S. GDP. So it's not that big in the grand scheme of things. Of course, it really does depend on how long this would last. But normally we do see the economy bounce back pretty quickly. But Aaron was just mentioning the people who are furloughed. Yep. They're not going to be getting paid. They would get back pay, but think about if this goes on for a couple of weeks, the ripple effect. They may not be able to pay rent. They may not be able to pay their credit card bills. And you start to see that ripple effect going on and on. Again, I don't want people to panic right now because it is not a huge amount in the grand scheme of things. But for those people who it is really impacting their financial situation, it's going to hurt.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got to, your point is well taken that there will be back pay once the government is reopened, and hopefully landlords can perhaps find grace while people are going through this. But banks don't necessarily care. When you got to pay the mortgage, you got to pay the mortgage. When you got to pay the credit card bill, they're happy to not have you pay it, and they'll just charge you those interest rates that are astronomical. And then in a few weeks or a few months, when you finally get the money, now you're paying catch up. So the question, of course, is how does it affect entities like banks, like insurance companies, like, for example, people who have medical expenses that they need to pay right now, today?
It's going to be tough for those people, those federal workers, because, you know, to your point, if you miss a credit card payment, you end up having that late fee, that interest. The government's going to give you back pay, but they're not going to pay that interest that is the penalty. So that is really going to be tough. And folks that are living paycheck to paycheck, they're not going to have those savings to dip into. One
thing you mentioned also, Kelly, is that we may not get economic data because of this. So what does that mean?
Okay, so this is really important. We were going to get a jobs report on Friday, a CPI inflation report next week. That comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. They are out there gathering economic data. When the government is shut down, they can't do that. And so they have already stated in a shutdown, they aren't going to release those numbers. It's going to be delayed. Why is that important? The Federal Reserve is going to meet at the end of October, and they're going to utilize this data to determine if they're going to cut interest rates. The market is banking on a quarter-point cut at least by the end of the month, but I've been talking to analysts who said, hey, the Fed may just sort of go back to that wait-and-see approach because they don't have the data. The one thing, though, that I will note, Vlad, is we did get the ADP employment report this morning. It focuses on the private sector. It showed that in September, the U.S. economy lost 32,000 jobs. It speaks to that weakening labor market. So they may start to use reports like that more impactfully when they make the decision.
What I find so interesting is the market is sort of like, yeah, we were expecting this, and the market has been very strong over the last couple of weeks, even as this weaker than expected economic data comes out. So it's really interesting. Kelly, thank you very much. Always good to have you, my friend.